Thank you for coming. I am going to be talking about a survey I did for MPA bus services. To start off with, my name is Pegan. I'm a second year grad student here, and I'm graduating in 2 days. Great. So some of the agencies that were involved in this survey include the Chamber of Commerce. They were kind of our supporting agency. They helped get the project started and then get me involved with some of the employers so that I could get in and survey their employees. And then primarily we work with the Flint Hills Metropolitan Planning Organization because they were already running an extended project on the expanding of routes for the ATA bus. So this survey is kind of complementing that project. And the ATA bus is the service that would be kind of influenced by any of the results and recommendations that I make. So the objective of this survey was, or this research was to talk to employees of primary employers about their opinions on whether or not the ATA bus is accessible and what kind of influences they needed to ride the ATA bus. When we're talking about primary employers, we're talking about manufacturing industry primarily, but the people who provide goods and services that can then be exported out of that market. So we are going to talk about some of the surveys I looked at in order to get an idea of what to put on the survey, look at my methods for completing the survey, then review some of the results I found, talk about the takeaways from the whole survey, and then recommendations. So I looked at 7 different Midwest transit surveys to begin with, and we wanted to see how they defined accessibility, because there's very different ways of how accessibility is to different people, what it means to different people. So we were looking at that, and we found 4 themes within the different surveys that I tried to add into my own survey. The first was perceptions and awareness, and one of the questions that I kind of used was the Denver transit survey. And then we looked at influences and incentives. This comes from the Madison, Wisconsin transit survey. This one is about convenience, and it comes from the Wichita transit survey, and then safety and location concerns, and that one came from the Minneapolis Metropolitan Transit Survey. So we were looking at manufacturing employees, specifically 5 within the McCall Road district area, Abbott Aluminum, GTM Sports, Ware, Vancouver Windows, Parker, and Continental Mills. Together they have about 870 employees that we could survey. We got about 96 responses, which gave us about 11% response rate. We were not allowed to go into the places of business to actually interview employees. We had to give them a paper copy of the survey, mostly because of some security concerns from the HR personnel. They didn't want someone who's unauthorized wandering around the facilities. And so I had to rely on the HR personnel to give out the surveys and then remind them to ask their employees to use the survey, to take the surveys. We offered a chance to win 1 of 3 gift cards as an incentive to fill out, but we also only made the survey 10 questions long, so it was on 1 page that they could answer quickly and easily. And then the survey window was about 3 to 4 weeks. So we were looking at descriptive statistics, specifically what was the majority of what people were saying according to the questions that we asked. So we're going to go into some of those results. So I asked, how do you get to work? And the majority of people said that they use their car to get to work. It's a popular option for people in Manhattan. About 6% said that they either walk or bike, and then no one said that they ride the bus currently. We asked what would make you choose to ride the bus to work. We asked them in if statements, so if it was easier, if you had a guaranteed ride home, if the commute made it less stressful, meaning that you could get work done on the way and you didn't have to worry about traffic, or if there was no other alternative. Obviously, the no other alternative is the most popular choice. But if you take that out, then you have some really good responses that we could use, like if there was a closer bus stop than where they think there is one, if costs were comparable to driving a car, or if they didn't have to wait too long for a bus. Those are still relatively good options for people that would influence them to ride, so we were going to take a look at those. This question caused us a little bit of an issue. So one employer required that we take out these 3 responses for them to participate, and so that's why we had to keep them out of the rest of our responses, but they didn't really provide much of an influence over employees anyway. So we looked at alternative locations, and most people want a route to airports, according to the survey. So that was the most popular, and then it was KSU stadiums for events and games, and Aggieville were the top choices for people to ride the bus to other than work. We wanted to look at time of day and day of the week that would be most important to people if they rode the bus. So we looked at morning and afternoon were the highest responses. That's like 6 a.m. to noon and noon to 5, so typical commute times. So this seems like people would want to use it for commuting back and forth to work if they were going to use the bus. We also gave them the option of picking and choosing, so you could just say that you wanted it in the morning on the weekdays and then nothing else. So that's why it's coded as weekend, weekday, both and none. So people could choose weekend and weekday or nothing. So. Then we get into more demographic questions. We wanted to see where people were. Maybe they were farther out than our bus routes currently offer, but most people live within Manhattan, so they have potential access to some of the bus routes. And we also looked at how many vehicles were in a household. So maybe there's not very many vehicles available for someone to ride. However, we had 1 to 2 vehicles, and that was about 60% of the population said that they had either 1 vehicle or 2 vehicles. So then I looked at some cross-tabular analysis of some of the questions. And so I looked at preference of times and days a week to ride versus how many cars you had, and about we had most responses from car households saying that they would like to use it during the weekdays versus the weekends. And then 2 car households said that they would most likely use it on the weekends versus weekdays. This is a little skewed because we didn't have quite as many responses as we wanted. So just saying that if someone responded to the weekends, they most likely had a 2-car household. And then we looked at alternative locations based on age. So I wanted to see if there was any spots that people really needed to go based on where they're at in their life. And people in their 25 to 34-year-old range typically went to family-friendly locations, so places of worship, picking up their kids, Target, Walmart. And then if you were 35 to 44, you likely went to Aggieville, you likely went to Aggieville instead of any other spot. It was just interesting. These age ranges, 25 to 34 and 35 to 44-year-olds, responded most to this question, so that's why you get more percentages from them versus maybe some of the other ages. We also allowed for responses, open responses. We had one open question that asked if you don't ride the MTA bus now, why don't you ride it? I found some pretty interesting responses, like most things in town are easy enough to get to, but I don't like driving to Aggieville and downtown, or I need the bus earlier than 6 a.m. I had a lot of perception responses, like I heard that it's expensive, or I heard that it's really hard to find convenient times where I never thought of the bus. So that gets me into some of the takeaways I had from the results. I feel like most residents really like to use their vehicles. It's convenient for them. They like that independence. In Manhattan, you don't have to pay for parking in most places, so they're going to use their car. But people do have an interest in the bus. So if you have if you talk about maybe some information plans with the ETA bus, they've heard that things are changing, they've heard that there's rates that are out there, but they don't know a lot about it, so maybe providing more information they're willing to ride to specific locations like Aggieville, KSU stadiums, and the airport. And then they also need it at certain times. So peak times of day, a lot of people said 6 a.m. is a time that they are already at work, so they need it before 6 a.m. in the morning. Or they need to know more information about scheduling and routes. They just have these misconceptions about it. So that brings me into recommendations. I had two kind of categories. One was clear, accessible information. So again, misconceptions about what's out there for ETA bus. If we provided schedules and information about passes at work, they might be more informed about it instead of hoping that they go to the website and finding it there. They just aren't interested because they have a car and they can drive that. Or having information at bus stops about the routes. So someone can choose to stand there for 10 minutes if they want to, or they can see the bus isn't going to be here for 10 minutes, so they're going to do something else and come back. That kind of information would be really helpful to demonstrate that the bus is accessible, but help other residents kind of figure out what's going to work for them as well. And then potentially adding route service options. So again, people really want a Manhattan airport bus route. They found that would be really convenient. And then maybe offering earlier weekdays, so before 6 a.m. is something that a lot of people mentioned. But again, if this was offered, ETA buses just trying to demonstrate that they're more accessible and try and get people to ride their bus. These are just recommendations to help them with that. So I wanted to say thank you to Trent and to Jared for helping me with this. They were instrumental in getting me information on employers and then also helping me figure out what kind of questions to ask for the survey. So thank you guys.
I took one. Generally, how late does the bus run here? So I mean, it's always not available before 6 a.m. But how late does it run at night?
It depends. I think it's till 7 on weekdays.
It starts at the 6 o'clock hour. So if it's 6:15, it runs at 6:15, or if it's 6:59, it runs at 6:15. This is all changing.
What are some of the challenges you had when you were putting this together?
I mean, we had some issues with trying to get employers to be willing to allow me to put the survey out there for their employees. Mostly just responses. They needed to go through their own process of determining whether or not they fill out the survey.
Was that challenge more of an HR issue, or is that just kind of a reluctance on the part of the employer? And is there a reason that you would think that might be the case?
Both. Some employers just didn't want extra people in their place of business, which I understand, asking the questions. And then there's others that it was just a requirement that they had to go through and discuss specifically, like they're asking questions. Is this going to influence whether employees think that they need a bus pass or something like that?
How much does it cost to ride that bus?
It's $1 a ride, free transfers. If you're a K-State student with a need a parking ride, it's free. It's the direct shop.
When you talk about sort of that dynamic, right, the idea behind the survey was let's see what if people would take the bus to work, but that we sort of found that they want to use it for
Yeah, so we thought that people might want to use it more for commuting back and forth to work, specifically with this group of people, because they're more consistent Monday through Friday type of jobs, 8 to 5, but they really enjoy driving, they love it, they said it in every one of their comments, but they wouldn't mind riding the bus for things that seemed inconvenient, like trying to find a parking spot in Actonville, or trying to go to a game where there's a lot of traffic, going to the airport where you're using a car for a couple of days. Those things are seen as inconvenient, so the bus would be more convenient in that respect.
Were there any questions that sort of asked them, what if what's $1? It's $1, transfers are free, that's $5 a week. to get to and from? No, $10 we gotta get home too.
Well, 30-day pass is $30, so it's cheaper than that if you're.
Did you try any of those sorts of questions? You know, what would it take?
Can we ask them what it costs?
We didn't ask anything about cost specifically, we just asked if the cost was comparable to driving, or if an employer paid for your pass. I think it seemed to really influence people to want to ride the bus.
I would like to go back to the question that Deanna asked. And she was wondering whether it's the HR department or the employer, which I would sort of see as one and the same, but anyway. Do you think the non-response problem had to do with whichever of those two on the one hand versus the people, the workers on the other?
I think it was definitely influential in that. So if an employer was more enthusiastic about the survey, so I had some that said this would be very helpful, we really want our employees to take the survey. I got much more responses from them than someone who was less enthusiastic about it.
How many, did you do multiple ways of the survey, or did you just put it out there once, or?
We just put it out there once.
Okay.
They were very reluctant on letting me in their space.
Really? What else was it? What's a guaranteed ride?
Guaranteed ride to like home for emergencies. So if your kid got sick, or if you needed to go home for something, then you could get there without a car.
Did you ask any demographic questions?
Yes.
What sort of people are responding to you? Did you have enough people in here that actually did take the bus that you could say something about them?
Say that again?
Did you have enough people in here who actually took the bus so that you could say something about them?
Well, at the moment, no one takes the bus.
So that would be a no. Okay.
We did ask a question of whether or not they had taken the bus, and that was a pretty low percentage as well.
What if the Adibus people who've ever gone at it that way asked their ridership what they look like?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So what's that thing?
This is the first question of have you ever ridden the bus? So this is just asking if someone's ever tried the service before.
Is this buses generic or just the Adibus?
The Adibus.
Okay.
The question was have you ever ridden an Adibus?
Do you think the reluctancy for them, for like the employers to even let you take the survey would also come up if you wanted to try to educate their employee population on the Adibus in general?
It could potentially, yes, especially around passes. So there was a concern that if the responses for influences to ride, so paid by employer, some of the employers thought that employees would get an idea of that they deserve to have a bus pass in their compensation package of some kind. So it could be,
God forbid.
that was just one employer that's concerned about that, but
One of your comments had mentioned that people didn't know that there was a stop near them, or my curiosity with that is, having lived in Manhattan myself, I've probably only seen 2 stops that I can identify as bus stops. Do you think it's because they're not easily identifiable? That there's not like a bench or a covering or something that kind of alerts that you're at a bus stop?
We have signs.
that's a possibility.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, until 2012, the city of
Right.
Manhattan would not even allow a bus stop sign in the right of way.
Oh.
And there were no fixed routes before 2012. And no one rides the bus because there are no bus stops by any of these corners.
Right.
Does the city subsidize it all?
No.
Like that,
Well, I mean, public
Not
transport.
really.
the city gave $56,000 to Adibus last year for demand transfers,
That's not this.
Which is not this. And Adibus has put in a request for $75,000 in this current budget cycle to support the new routes.
To do fixed routes.
But that budget request has not been approved.
Okay, sorry.
Then I guess I have a question, how is the bus system funded if it's not funded through the
It's
city?
funded primarily through federal dollars. There are a few local matches, the United Way, K-State funds a large portion.
Just like $1 a ride and nobody's riding it,
Here you go.
I don't mean,
It's the chicken and the egg.
Mhm.
Park the street. You can't ride buses.
why do I bus to the humans? Insurance.
Kate, you were gonna say something about the demographics?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
So we asked where people live, so zip codes, specific.
Yeah, I can't see that chart. What is that telling me?
This one is telling you where they're located within the zip code. So looking at number of people who responded saying they were in,
Is blue lots?
yes.
Okay, good.
And those are, so that's not all in Manhattan either.
It's a
So,
color
I mean,
gradiated scale on
Where's the
There's some
university?
out of it, but 51 said that they lived in the city of Manhattan.
Point to the university.
665.
No, I'm trying to see what,
Somewhere right in that blue, yeah.
okay, so that's the city of Manhattan.
Manhattan's right here.
Okay, all right.
This is Readily, or this is 660 or 66502.
Okay. What else you got on demographics?
We had number of working vehicles in the household.
How about age?
We asked
Okay.
And interestingly, right, we found it's the 35-year-olds that really want to go out there.
right, the 35-year-olds want to go to Aggieville.
You need to get a life.
It's because they don't.
They don't want one.
They don't want it for
And 18-year-olds voting against
35-year-olds
35-year-olds.
don't know.
Yes, you have a question.
I'm 35, I'm good. Anyway, I have a question on the presentation. Do you think that Uber ridership might affect non-people going right now buses?
It might,
Possibly.
we didn't ask a question about that, but someone did say that they would take a bus or Uber.
To answer your question, there's some new data out just this week about the impact Uber is having on public transportation across the United States. It's
How so?
well, as in bike share, actually. Many people, the convenience of bike share and or Uber and Lyft is significantly cut. For
Okay.
example, New York City bus ridership is down from 27% in
Wow.
5 years, and most of it is due to what people used to do. Just used to be too far to walk is now perfect for riding a bike, and they built a lot of infrastructure to support that, and vice versa. If it's inclement weather, and you know exactly where you want to be, you don't wait for the bus in your service. And there's your Uber, so there's some stuff out there.
This is just a concept that your data has given me. So for Aggieville, during that, or not Aggieville, but during game or fall, when football season is in full swing, I feel like a big problem is parking. So perhaps K-State could allocate some of their funds that they put towards ATA and use a park and ride. People could like park at Walmart, buy the things they want, get on the bus, and go to the game.
There is a service out there that does some sort of like park and ride specifically for football games that ATA bus is involved with. Not sure how successful it is.
Aggieville Business Association does. I'd be interested to see K-State Athletics. But taking
Yeah. Part of the issue too is where do the buses pull in and drop off the patrons? And so if you look at the new North Campus corridor plans, they actually have bus pull-offs around the stadium to facilitate the use of public transportation to get to the stadium. Because as we continue to build along that Kimball corridor, all those tailgating and all those parking spots continue to go away. So there's a recognition that they have to provide the infrastructure to support bus transportation to the football complex. So that's all part of that plan. It's just gonna take a long time.
Frank, do you want to see any other demographics?
No, I'm just gonna apply.